Daf Ayin Ches Amud Aleph will begin Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, the bottom line. Continuing on with the discussion about being Memayet, the height of the kaisel. Reducing the height of the kaisel so that there is effectively not 10 tefachim or more than 10 tefachim from the ground to the top of the kaisel, thereby enabling a person to use the top of the wall. If there's a ledge that protrudes from the wall, it's dalet al dalet and measures 4 by 4 tefachim, and if he rested against it, a sulam, that's even if it's not wide, dalet tefachim wide, it's kolshu, that reduces the height of the wall. That's only if he leans the ladder against the ledge. But if he only leans it next to it, against the wall next to the ledge, he's just extending the width of the ledge, and that does not reduce the height for the wall. So let's illustrate it as follows. If you have a wall, and from the ground level, there's more than 10. But there's a ledge that projects from the wall. Now from the top of the ledge to the top of the wall, it's not 10 tefach. It's less than 10 tefach. However, as we mentioned before, in order to be an effective miyut, what you're mamait with has to rest on the ground. It has to be resting on the ground, and it has to be dalet. Now here, the Gemara says dalet al dalet. There is a problem that Rashi mentioned earlier. He didn't say dalet al dalet. He said a length of dalet. Here, the Gear says dalet al dalet. The Yad Dovid discusses this problem, but I'll call upon him. It has to be what you're mamait with has to be dalet or dalet al dalet. And it has to be resting on the ground. Here, you have the ledge, which is dalet al dalet, but it doesn't rest on the ground. Now there's a ladder. The ladder is not dalet wide, so the ladder itself cannot serve as a miyut. However, the rungs of the ladder are within 3 of each other, and the bottom rung is within 3 of the ground. So the ladder is considered to be on the ground. So therefore, if you have the ledge projecting from the wall, and you have the ladder that rests against the ledge, it's leaning against the ledge, so therefore this connects the ledge to the ground. Since the rungs are within 3 of the ground, the ladder is within 3 of the ground, and each rung is within 3 of each other, this is connected part of the ground. If this is leaning on the ledge is considered to be on the ground, and therefore you have a miyut of dalet al dalet on the ground, which is mamayet the height. However, if the ladder is against the wall, even if it's next to the ledge, it only widens the ledge, but it doesn't make consider the ledge to be on the ground. It only widens the top part of this, widens the ledge itself, but it doesn't connect the ledge to the ground. The ladder has to be leaning on the ledge. If the height of the wall is 19, you only need 1 ledge to be matred. So very much in the similar way that we just discussed, if you have the ladder resting on the ledge, and then you only need 1 ledge. So because the wall is not 20, it's only 19, then the distance between the ledge and the top of the wall is going to be less than 10. If you put the ledge in the middle, it'll be less than 10. So you only need 1 ledge to be matred. But kaisel esrim, if the height of the wall is 20 or more than 20 actually, then you would need 2 zizim to be matred. then you would be 2 zizim because 1 would not be enough. Because if you put the ledge in the middle, there's still going to be more than 10 tefachim between the ledge and the top of the wall. And that's why the Ritva says that what we mean is it's loidak. It really means more precisely more than 20, because from the ledge you have to account for the thickness of the ledge. From the ledge to the top of the wall, then in a case where the kaisel is more than 20, it'll be more than 10. So it's shnei zizim latirai. And therefore you need 2 zizim, because you have to be mamayed that from the top ledge, there isn't 10 tefachim, more than 10 tefachim from the top ledge. Therefore, you would have to have 2 ledges to be matrid. It's not enough to have 1. You would have to have 2. If this is more than 20, you'll have to have 2 ledges, so that from the top one, there is not 10 tvachim. So that's what you would have to have if you have that height of the wall. But but you have to put the ledges, you can't put them one right on top of the other, because then you don't have proper access. You have to put it keneged zeh, so you can have a ladder going up to one, and then from this one, a ladder that goes up to the other one. So it's like you have a staircase, ladders going to this, and from this one, ladders going up to this. If it's one on top of each other, it's not accessible because you can't climb one to the other. So we're talking about being memayed. Now we're discussing about other cases of being memayed. If you have a post in Rishus Harab, it's Gavoya Sor, it's 10 high and 4 wide. So now if you have a post, if it's 10 high and you have 4 dalet al dalet. So if you have dalet al, you have the post, it's 10 high from the ground. And the top part of it is dalet al dalet, and the top part is dalet. This is a rishus hayachid. So even if on the ground it's a rishus harabim, this is a rishus hayachid, or a person throws from the ground to the top of the post. He's throwing from rishus harabim to rishus hayachid, and he's chayib. But if he's not, but yosid kolshu, if he puts a peg, even a small peg on top, then he's reducing the surface of this. Now it's less than dalet al dalet. Even a tiny peg, that a post that he puts in it, then if this is only dalet al dalet, exactly dalet al dalet, if he puts a post over here, now this is less than dalet al dalet, so it's a malkam patur, and therefore, if a person throws from the street to there, he'd be potter, or it's even mutter. So therefore, he makes it into malkam patur. But that post, that peg has to be at least 3 high. It has to be at least 3 tvachim higher than the surface of the post. Because if it's not, then it's just considered to be part of the top of the post. It's part of the contour and it's bottled to the top of the post. It has to be at least 3 tvachim high. They say no. They say even if it's not 3 high, it's still a malkam patur. It's still mamayed, my taima lemishtamishle, because it's practically not usable. The top of this post is practically not usable, so therefore it would still be mamayed. But Rav Ashi Amri says no. Afil gavoya shleisha, even if it is 3 high, even if it has that height, it's not mamayed. It does not mamayed, and it's not a malkam patur. My time, what's the reason? Because you're not making it not usable. It's still a usable surface because you can hang something on it. You can use it as a post to hang something or a hook to hang something. So it's still usable. It doesn't diminish the usage of it in any way. Rav Ashi said, that Mola Kula B'Yaseda is Mao. He asked the following question. Let's say the entire surface was filled with pegs. You put it on the entire surface, he filled it with pegs. Now, what's the there? So until now we were discussing if there's one. What about the entire surface was filled? Amr Lei, Lashmiel Had Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Didn't you hear what Rabbi Yochanan said? Borvich Leyosa Mitzarf La'asor. He said, it's in a different context, but he said that a bor va'asor mitzaref la'asor. If you have Rishus Harabim, now there's a pit in Rishus Harabim. The dimensions of a Rishus HaYochid have to be 10 deep or 10 high. In this case, it's a bor, it's deep, 10 deep, and it has to have a width of Dalet al Dalet. That makes it a Rishus HaYochid. Well, he said that a bor v'chol yosa, if you have the pit, now the rim of the pit, it surrounds it. Now, if the bore itself is not 10 deep, but if you combine it with the depth of the bore together with the height of the rim, now you have a height of 10. Rabbi Yochanan says, therefore, it's considered to have a depth of 10, because you are mitzaref the bore, the depth of the bore, with the rim, with chuliosa. Similarly, on the width, if the width of the bore is not dalet al dalet, but if you take it, combine it with the width of the rim, you have dalet al dalet. And therefore, similarly, you combine the two and it has the dimensions of a Rishus HaYochid. So what do you have to say? That you can combine the two. Why is that? But it's not usable if you have the width over here, you have the rim, the bore itself is an open cavity. So why is it considered to have the dimensions of Dalet al Dalet? It's an open space, it's not usable. What must you say? That you can put a board on it, you can put something on top, you can put something, and now it's a usable surface of Dalet al Dalet. So here also, here also it's the same idea. You can put a board on it, so even though it's filled with pegs, but you put a board on it, and now it's usable as a flat surface. So therefore, it should still be considered a Rishus HaYochid. So here now also, and therefore he says that it's still considered a Rishus HaYochid. Amar V'Yirmei Shmuel, Kaisel Asara, Sarach Sulam, Arbos V'Lahatira. He says, if you have a wall that's 10, the ladder has to be more than 10, because if the ladder is only 10, well, when you put it on an incline, won't reach the top of the wall, because you can't put the ladder straight up. You have to incline it so the person can climb up. That's what he holds. And therefore, in order to say that you can reach the top of the wall, the ladder has to be 14. Now, the way Rashi learns it is because you extend it 4 tvachim from the top of the wall. It's extended out 4 tvachim from the top of the wall. And that's the angle of it. So, therefore, you need 14 in order for the ladder to reach the top of the wall. Tosfos learns it somewhat differently. He learns that, as we'll go through the next cases, that it's a 45-degree angle, lav davke 4 tvachim extended from the wall. So, therefore, he said, the Yomi Masechet says, the zulam, and the ladder has to be 14 tvachim to be matred, so that when you put it on the slope, the incline that's required, it reaches the top of the wall. He says you don't need 14. He says even 13 and a little bit is sufficient, because you don't have to reach mamish the top of the wall. As long as you're within a tefach of the top of the wall, it's sufficient. Abai says even 11 and a mashu is enough, because you only have to reach within 3 tvachim of the top of the wall. It's still considered accessible if you're within 3 tvachim of the top of the wall. He says even 7 and a bit. Even 7 and a bit. Why is that? Why even 7 and a bit? because he says that you don't have to reach to the top of the wall, as Abaye said, but he said you don't even need a slope. You can put it upright. He holds that it still would be considered accessible even without the slope. And therefore, even without the slope, if it was upright, then it would be sufficient for 7 and a mashu, because you're within 3 of the top of the wall. Abaye said 11 and a mashu. He says within 3 of the top of the wall is sufficient, it's considered accessible, but you need a slope, and therefore the slope has to be, the way Rashi is learning, at least 4. So therefore it has to be 11 a mashu. But Abaye says you don't have to incline it, and it can be upright, and then 7 mashu is enough. Amarav. So Rav, continuing on with this opinion that we just mentioned, Rav says sulam azokov memayit. Even if the sulam is upright, it's in a vertical position, it's not inclined, it's also memayit. So is that Gemara? That's a Gemara. He said it's a Kabbalah he received from his Rebbeim. V'lo yadana my time, but I don't know the reason for it. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, what do you mean, Amar Shmuel? Lo yadava my time daha milsa. He said, you don't know the reason for this? Why don't you know the reason for it? We said when you have 2 platforms, we learned earlier, 2 platforms right on top of each other, then they can be mamayit. As we learned earlier, if you have 2 platforms, one on top of each other, even though they're upright, even though they're one on top of each other, it could be mamayit. You allow the mir. Now we learned that there are qualifications in that, there's restrictions in that. They have to be within 3 tvachim of each other. But nevertheless, even though they're one on top of each other, even though they're on top of each other, it's may, even though it's vertical. So here also, it should be the same. And Taisus points out over here, now this is Shmuel just explaining that shita. He himself does not hold of that, because as we just learned, he holds that it has to be 14, that a vertical ladder is not considered accessible, but he's explaining this shita. If you use the trunks, the part of the trunks of the trees, of the palm trees in Bovel, they don't have to be attached to the ground. Now, even though we learned before that something to be mamayat, to diminish, to be mamayat the height of the wall, it has to be something that is not moved away, that's not movable. Now here, as Rashi mentioned, we're talking about the trunks that are used as chairs, used as seats, so they're not muksa. It's not a question of, they're not muksa over here. Now, therefore, why would they consider it to be permanent? Why would they be mamayat the height of the wall? So he says, nevertheless, they don't have to be attached, because since they're heavy, they're fixed in the place, they're not moved. They don't move, people don't move them around, they're very heavy, so they're considered to be kavua, and therefore they're mamayat the height. Rav Yosef Amar Rav Yeshia Sulamish B'Bavel and Tzricha Keva. He says the ladders that are used in Bavel don't have to be fixed. Similar reason. Now the ladders, as we learned earlier, Taisus mentioned that these types of ladders are household ladders and are not muksa. They're considered kalim. So, but why is it mamayit? It has to be permanent. My taima kvedan kaivatam. In a similar way, the weight of it fixes it in its place. Now, Manda Amr Sulam is the one who says the ladders kol shkein golem. Certainly, you would agree that the tree trunks are mimayit. They're considered to be immovable. But Manda Amr the kolim, but the one who says the kolim avul sulama is loy. But sulama is, he says, no, it's not that way. That's not the case by the ladders. The ladders are lighter and they are considered to be movable. If there's a ladder on one side and a ladder on the other side of the wall, and each ladder was less than 2 tefach, vikashim bamsa, and you have straw in the middle of them, mahu. So you have ladders on each side, but the ladders are, each one is less than 2 tefachim. So you don't have it to be the bimamayit, it has to be 4 tvachim. You don't have that, but you have straw that's in the middle. In the middle of it is straw. Now, the combined width over here is more than dalet tvachim. So, what would be the din? So over here, now, if you utilize the straw and you combine it with it, you have the width of dalet tvachim. You have a width of dalet tvachim, and therefore, perhaps you'll say that that's mamayit. So what is it din? Omer le, it's not. It's not mamayit. We don't look at it as being a ladder of dalet tvachim. And kaf haregel oil behem. He says it's not considered accessible because when you climb a ladder, you put your foot in the middle and you climb in the middle section of the ladder and you hold on to each side. Well, if the middle section is straw, you can't put your weight on that straw. It won't hold your weight. So practically, this is not practical, and it can't be used as a ladder. It's practically not usable as a ladder, and therefore, it's not mamayit because you don't have access to the wall. So therefore, he says it's not valid. So you can't extend the width of the ladder with the straw. But, however, he asks the following: kasha mikan v'kasha mikan. If you have the opposite case, you have the middle section is a fixed part of the ladder, but you have kasha mikan on each side is a straw. The middle is wood or something that's solid. A solid part of the ladder. So you have kasha mikan v'kasha mikan v'sulam be'em samahu. He said that is considered to be a valid extension because since the middle portion is solid, it will support the weight of his foot, so he can climb up the ladder. On each side is straw. That's sufficient for his hand to hold on to the straw of the ladder with his hand. So therefore it's practical. He can climb up the ladder. He puts his foot on the middle section. It supports his weight. And he puts his hands are resting on the side. And even though there's straw, it's practically usable. Therefore it serves as an extension for the ladder.